Welcome everyone to the next book camps in our series. This one is all things editing. And I have no doubt today's call will be very informative and you'll learn. I learn lots about editing every time I do one of these exercises or talk to our editors. So I have no doubt this will be a fun and exciting event today. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone, from wherever you are around the world. We are recording the call today for your information. Hopefully that's okay with you. And if you can, make sure your phones are on vibrate. We'll do our presentation, and if there's some questions at the end, if we have enough time before the top of the hour, we'll be happy to answer them. If not, you can always email us as well. I think the email address, if I'm not mistaken, Jen, if you can drop it in the chat window, I think it's guide@bookkamps.com, and note that it's an S plural, Bookkamps. So we'll get that in the chat window for you. But let's get this party started and let's talk about all things editing.
So when I started, I had all kinds of, when I started writing my first book, I had all kinds of questions. And I think it's pretty common of most authors. Can I write this? Is anybody going to read it? Am I a good writer? What happens if I need help to get that message across? I have a great message, but I'm not really sure I can put it on paper. When will I have time to write my book? I have my book written, but now what? Well, most of those questions are actually things that an editor can help solve. One of the main things that an editor can do is help craft your book with you. Different kinds of editors do different things, but they help you craft your book so that it looks more professional and looks better. They also can help answer those questions. Different editors use different kinds of style manuals. So a style manual is nothing more than a rule book. So there's different kinds of style manuals. And I've worked in a couple of different ones. There's the Chicago Manual of Style. That is probably the most commonly used right now, at least in the English publishing world. I did a sort of quick poll of a variety of different publishers, and that's the one that they standardly use and recommend. There's also the AP Style Book, the APA Publication Manual, written a lot of stuff in APA. There's New Oxford Style Manual, MLA handbook. There's a variety of them, and you want to be sure that your style matches what your editors are using. Now, I will tell you that I do best when I know what the rules are, and those are written down and very clear so you can know what those rules are. But there's all kinds of different types of editing. So Judy, can you tell us about some of those?
Sure. As you said, there is different kinds, and trust me, I've talked to lots of different people and I've got different versions of what the different styles of editing are. So there is ghostwriting, there is developmental or evaluation editing, there's copy or line editing. It's referred to in proofreading. Sorry, I'm just sending Jen a note to change the slides because oops, I don't know what happened there. But anyways, those are primarily the four. And again, I find that there is some confusion, but I find that if depends on the editor. So evaluation editing is sometimes referred to as developmental editing. Could those be a little bit different? Yeah, they could, but we kind of categorize them because I find that there's different things that happen through different times, right? So, okay, let's talk about ghostwriting. Ghostwriting That one is probably the one that's the least understood. It's well heard of. Everybody knows and has heard of ghostwriting, but it's the least understood in the industry. In this one, you'd hire someone who basically writes the book for you, the author. So you'd still need to create the theme of the book. You'd have to probably create the outline of a book. You, of course, retain 100% of the rights of the book. You do not need to give any rights to a ghostwriter at all. You don't even have to acknowledge them or identify them. That's why they're called ghost writers. So there, it is someone else who's writing, but it's writing in your voice. It's your message, your story, your book, but it's in your voice. And they'll work very closely with you, usually in interview style, to pull together the ghostwriting of the book. And it usually, that process takes usually up to about 6 months. I've seen it take longer. I've seen it not too often take less time than that. A good ghostwriter is probably with you for at least that long. Price-wise, way range of pricing. I've been pleasantly surprised by some very good ghostwriters being in the low thousands. And I know that I've heard of I'd probably say the average for like let's just use for the sake of today, say a 40 to 50,000 word manuscript. I've seen that be probably in the anywhere from 15 to 25,000 is usually a good ghostwriter, but a really great ghostwriter is in around $100,000. So trust me, the range is massive for ghostwriting. So the next one is the evaluation or the developmental editing. To me, it's both the same. I'm sure that some people are squirming when I say that. The author writes the manuscript. Their job is to write the book. However, they need help with, like I had a gentleman yesterday who called and said, I believe my book is written. What I want to make sure is it's not too long, it's not too short. Am I getting the message across? Do I keep the reader engaged? Do I keep them turning pages? Do I keep them involved in what's going on? So they evaluate your storyline, they make sure your message is clear, they make sure there's no extra content, they make sure that sentences haven't fallen off or that you've kind of skipped around too much. It's usually done in an interview style. You then get the opportunity as the author to read it and give feedback as you're progressing through it. Again, you're writing it. So the editor, the developmental editor, evaluation editor, is giving you suggestions. They may write part of it, but again, this is your book. It should be written by you. So understand the difference. Ghostwriting, they write the book. Evaluation, developmental, you're writing the book. It's about a 3 to 6 month process. I'd be surprised if it ends up being shorter than that. Cost, that one's a tough one. Again, if we look at the 40 to 50,000 words, we're probably anywhere from about $2,000 to $5,000, just to give you a bit of an idea of how that works. But it's a lot of back and forth, this process. So the next one we mention is copy or line editing. I've heard that they're described 2 different ways. I was just talking to Ashley about it before the call started, is that we say we copy edit, but we kind of do both. It depends on the quality of the writing that we receive. So we kind of have I would call it our hybrid. Again, it's the Hasmark way. That's the way we always are. And it's not that we make up our own rules, but we find through time that we have to adjust. We don't stick within the exact perimeters. Again, the author writes the entire book. It is checking for spelling and grammar, punctuation, but it's more about ensuring that if you're in the middle of a thought and you forgot to finish a sentence, or you just went away because you were doing something else and you didn't finish a sentence, like you've got fragmented sentences or incomplete paragraphs, or you skip, one of the things that they would be doing is I can't think of what the term is called, but the past tense, present tense, the I or the you, I said, or speaking in the first person or the third person, that type of thing. All of those kind of requirements. And at the end of this, you pretty much, your book should be quite good. You should actually very good. You should have a story that is readable, enjoyable, and it's what I would refer to as complete in theme, in concept. So that's what copy editing is. I don't know whether at any time, Ashley or Jen, if there's something I'm missing here, don't be afraid to jump in on this too. And finally, proofreading. We do, of course, Copyline edit. We can do any one of the 4 types of editing. In every book we do editing and proofreading, unless there's a specific reason for not doing editing. But at a minimum, we proofread every single book of ours. It is just one more person to catch additional errors. It's making sure punctuation and spacing is done correctly for the most part, but it can change a little in layout. So don't assume it's perfect, but this usually takes less than a month. It kind of follows in line with the editing. If the editing takes about a month, it could be a little bit less than that. But the proofreaders, it's funny, this sentence, proofreaders aren't copy editors. They don't do the same job. But don't assume they're any less educated or any less knowledgeable. It is, in fact, I had a talk with Catherine, who does all of our hires and recommends all of our editors. And I said to her, could we hire proofreaders at a less qualified place? And she said, absolutely not. In fact, these guys should be more qualified, if anything. The standard for hiring should be higher for a proofreader, because they're the kind of the end extra set of eyes. At this point, your manuscript should be good to go. By the time the proofreader is finished, it should be a very readable, legible book that you get in your hands.
Rules of engagement. As an author, I always want to know what the rules are. So around submission and editing, it's similar sorts of things. So first off, use Word. Almost everybody would like you to use Word when you submit. Check with your publisher, but typically it's Word, and certainly it has markets Word. There are issues, you can write it in Google Docs, but they will add some extra things that won't show up necessarily. And that can really slow down the beginning parts of the publishing process. You don't want to send a PDF. You can't edit a PDF. You can't make those changes readily and in ways that are going to flow through all the way to layout and stuff. For goodness sakes, type it in some way, not handwritten, type it electronically. There are all kinds of tools. Word has a speech to text option. So if typing is not your thing, then you can turn on the type to text, the talk to text, and actually, as you speak, it shows up. There's a ton of other software that will also work for that. Once so when you submit it, you want it to be there. You want to be, before you get to editing, you want to be totally done with your book. You don't want to make substantial changes unless your editor tells you that those are needed. So the way it works is the editor, you will send your draft to the editor. They will make the changes and they'll use markup in Word. So then you can accept or deny the changes. They'll also put some comments in. If you have additional changes, it goes back and forth a little bit, typically twice or so, often only twice for the editing. And then proofing is another that's run through like that in a similar way. You want to always only be editing by the time you're in the editing process. The time for writing was before that. You don't want to be doing that in there. So, Judy, does this always go as easily as I said?
What you did was you conjured up all of these, and it's funny, the slide that comes up next is called Scary Stories. So I think timing is everything. I don't know whether, I think Dave was with me when we were at an event here in Ottawa, and one of our authors actually brought us their story, and it was written basically on a piece of paper or a napkin or something. You've heard the stories, you've seen the movies, we've experienced it. Trust me.
And there was another one where the lady that wrote the book literally didn't have access to Word or any computers. So she had to do it on a typewriter. She literally wrote her manuscript on a typewriter. So
there's a software though that converts from a typewriter to Word, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what we text to Word or something like that. Yeah.
There's another one where we sent, we'll talk about that in a second, but we sent a PDF and they printed the PDF, hand wrote, and I'm sure the girls are squirming right now, hand wrote the notes, scanned it back and sent it to us. Do you know the magnitude of work that's required to fix errors in that? So Scary Story, we can share a lot of scary stories about things that have happened with us. I think one of them that I want to mention here, though, is there's we have quite a few of them, and the girls will know this one too. And I'm definitely not going to mention any authors' names, but quite often I get manuscripts sent to me, and the author will say, "Oh, don't worry, you don't need to edit, you don't need to proofread it, I've done it." Well, I can go after story after story after story, but I remember one gentleman's book that we got recently. The book is in publication. He wants to bring out a second edition. So we're changing the cover, we're changing the ISBN. We don't have to change any content, but we thought we better take a peek at it. We not only ended up having to proofread it, we actually ended up having to go back and edit it. It was needed that much. And that brings me to this scary story. I want you guys to know, everybody who hears this message, everybody who's ever worked with us, who will work with us in the future, a book after it's edited and proofread, the accuracy rate in general across the acceptable rate is 95%. So on a 50,000 word book, that means you have 2,500 errors. I had a editor that worked for us back, Jennifer will remember this lady. We'd get complaints about the errors in the book. And that's what she kept saying to us. You realize that standard industry is 95% editors. That's what they work to. That's the standard they're held to. I'll tell you right now, what we strive for is the second one that we mentioned here. And it is a ton of work. And 99.3% rate still means there's 300 errors. I challenge anybody to bring me a book that is error-free. I don't think there's a book on the bookshelf. Every time I bring this up, somebody tells me about the big guys, Paulo Coelho, or the Chicken Soup for the Soul, or the big books that are so well known. I think it was not the Twilight series, the other book. I never remember the name of it, that became a series of movies. They said it was poorly written and it was filled with mistakes. And it ended up being a blockbuster movie series. So I find it pretty incredible. What's that?
50 Shades.
50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty written. Yeah.
Yep. That one I'll mention because that wasn't us that did that. And I see, Jamie, is there listed do's and don'ts for authors before they send to ASMARC? We're actually going to do, Marna's going to talk about that one in a minute. But honestly, I think the big thing for us is that first understand that there will be errors. We don't strive for them. We don't hold that ourselves to that standard, but we're human beings. And we've tried everything. We've tried a number of people, but I know for myself, when I go and look I can do one of those. You ever go on Facebook and they do one of those tests? If you can read this, you're at X percentile of brainiacs. And I'm like, trust me, I'm not a brainiac. And the whole center of the word is all mixed up, but I can read the first and last, and therefore I can read the whole thing. Well, that's what we do. My book, for example, I had, I think, 4 editors. I can't remember how many thousands I spent on my own book, and it's a collaborative book. And on the book, one of the things that actually it's Steve Lowell that wrote the endorsement for it. And instead of writing mountain, like to climb a mountain, it says maintain, climb and maintain. Well, maintain spelled right. So no Grammarly or anything like that would have caught that. And 4 eyeballs, 5 eyeballs, 6 eyeballs with Jen never caught it for all the reading that we did on it. So it's pretty incredible. And I think authors should understand that. And can you imagine what the accuracy rate is for when you do it yourself? Yep. So we, for example, and Jamie's aware of it, we have an editor process for hiring at ASMARC. I find it to be quite stringent. I find it to be quite strict based on the fact that very few editors come into us, even though they've had years of experience. It's almost like the slide before where we talk about the percentage of errors. It is a careful selection. We have I appreciate that Catherine has been with us a few years now. She's Peggy's editor of her books, and it's the only books I think she edits these days. We do a screening process. So first we go out there, get applications. Usually when we're looking for an editor, we don't do much advertising, only LinkedIn, and we usually get 40, 50, 60 applicants. We then screen that. We'll pull out maybe 20 or so that seem to be the standard we're looking for. We then send them the test. And honestly, Catherine comes back, she does the test, she bases on the Chicago Manual of Style, I think it is. Whoops. And honestly, I don't know if it's 10%. It's definitely less. I would probably say it's closer to about 5%. Usually out of the 20 or so, she comes back with 3, 5, maybe 6 or 7 applicants that we then end up hiring. So there it is, Chicago Manual of Style. So it is quite a process. And luckily right now, and happily, I must say, we're about to hire our 10th. So we definitely have quite a few, because we understand that with you submitting your manuscript, you want it through quickly. The other thing we do is we'll check your book from front cover to back cover. We tried at one time, we didn't, because we're always seem to be in a rush, or authors seem to be in a rush to make their date. I'd rather you delay your date than not edit a segment of your book. So right from the dedication to the title page, to the copyright page. The copyright page is edited every time, by the way, right through, because we've spelled names wrong on the copyright page. So every section of the book is put through the editing with ASMARC. We learn by trial and error.
So, as an author, how do you edit yourself? Well, for me, I don't think you should. Editors, when they are producing their own books, will have somebody else edit it. You need another set of eyes. You can if you have that grammar Nazi friend who is just super duper with grammar, they might be an editor. They might not have the skills they need. Not bad to have them take a look at it, but you can also hire an editor yourself. So you want to make sure that you pick a good one. And, you might want to, you won't have Judy's test, but you might want to figure out your own. Decide what kind of style manual that you want them to use, Chicago or APA or whatever. There's a variety of places that you can find them. You can find them on Fiverr and Readsy and Upwork, but I'll tell you, I've got a 10-year-old nephew, and if he wanted to, he could set up an account on Fiverr. Oh, he'd probably have to be 18, but it doesn't take, anybody can call themselves an editor. So be careful when you are doing that. There's also Editors Association. There's Editors Canada. There's Editors Associations in the United States. Most countries have an Editors Association. The other person, if you're doing this yourself in the, totally DIY, the other thing is that you want to hire a proofreader. Same deal. Find a good one. You can find them at similar places that we talked about. So Readsy and Upwork and Fiverr and places like that. And be sure that you vet them thoroughly. Make sure that they are going to be good at what you're doing, because ultimately how this looks is very much dependent on all of these little details, like the editing and the proofreading. So there are some pitfalls to editing yourself. For example, if it doesn't work, you are going to look unprofessional. You can talk to your family and your friends and get some feedback about what they think. But first off, sometimes if they're really close to you, it's two potential problems. One is that they're going to tell you it's fabulous and it's wonderful, and maybe it is, and maybe it's not, but you don't know that because they don't want to hurt your feelings. Or they may tell you something that does hurt your feelings or get you totally off from where you believe your target audience is. I made that mistake when mine was just a baby book and not near finish. I showed it to my parents. Two people, they've lived together for decades. They can finish each other's sentences. My mom, oh, wow, this is fantastic. I love what you've done. My dad, oh, you didn't do it at all properly. You need lots more scientific proof and you need to cite things, and this is serious. The aim, the group, my target audience wasn't either of them. And so that's one thing that you want to do with your early readers, but you also want to be sure it's edited well, because your book is your calling card and you want to look professional and like you know what you're doing. One of the tools that I use is Grammarly, and that's going to do some level of helping you with it, but it doesn't catch all of the errors. And even you yourself aren't going to catch all of those errors. You can, there are mistakes that frankly you don't see. Those online tests that Judy was just talking about, the reason you can see those missing letters or mixed up letters in the middle and still read it properly is your brain fixes that. It's really great if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger and your brain has to fill in from not very much information. That's how our brains happened. Now, when you're looking at something very specific and very accurate, it doesn't necessarily see all that. Punctuation too, and misspellings. So all of those things you want to be sure you have. Your brain fills in all of those holes because that's just how it is. You also want fresh eyes and another perspective. So another person reading it, either in your target audience or an editor also can provide this, is just a fresh way of seeing it. And you may have thought, and I may have thought that I did a great job communicating something. And when somebody else read it, said, oh, well, I don't understand what you're talking about there. That's always good to know, and how you can fix it so it's well done for the masses. One trick that I do before I send it into edit is I actually give it a bit of a timeout. So I take a week off from the book. I don't look at it at all. And then I start reading it from the very beginning and work all the way through. I found all sorts of things that I thought were perfectly clear, or I skipped a sentence or a word or even a paragraph. That happens, but you catch that better if you can give it a rest for a second and make it not all encompassing for you. In addition to that, sometimes that'll help you see those mistakes, but this is a product that you've put a lot of work in, and a lot of love and blood and sweat and tears maybe, and you want to be able to relax and know it's in good hands. That's why I choose professionals to do my editing, and frankly, I used Hasmark for this book.
Yeah, all of this is incredible, what we've talked about here, because just what you said, though, it's not that you can't edit yourself. You can, and it's not that you can't ask other people for feedback. It's just what you said. It's funny, when we were talking about it earlier today, I was thinking about the feedback, and you have to be careful.
Yeah.
Because the book is being presented as your idea, your concept. It's got to be in your voice. And even with this one manuscript I'm talking about, it has PDF, it's in a PDF, and it's got these notes, these scriber notes. And I'm thinking, but that's an opinion. The woman who wrote the book, it's her opinion about the book. The book isn't her opinion, period. And then all of a sudden you ask somebody else and they come up with their own ideas for it. Doesn't make them, they're not right or wrong. They're just not for the book itself. So I find that you do have to be very careful. And I love that you talked about it. And I squirmed a bit. I got so many stories to share, and I'm happy to have anyone on the line, including Jamie, share at this point with us too. But I was thinking about, oh my goodness, what was it? What just crossed my head? I do know one thing. I know what it was, Fiverr. I should have written it down. You mentioned Fiverr, I squirm. I'm on many calls, and people say Fiverr. Not to say that we haven't used Fiverr, because we have. So I wouldn't say you can't use it, but just what you said, I caution people when you're going to Fiverr. The one thing that we think of, and we do this too, you go and you look for reviews, and you think, okay, they only all have 4 or 5 star reviews, and most of them have hundreds. What I learned a few months ago was that we had someone do animation for us. The author didn't like it, asked for a refund. We then went to Fiverr, told them it's not acceptable. They refunded us the money in full. I bet you nowhere in the world outside of Fiverr do you get a refund in full. But you know why? That biases the reviews, because guess what I'm not going to do? They give me my money back. I'm going away and I'm not saying anything, and I didn't. But that's not fair to the next guy that comes along that's going to hire those same people. Not to say that they did anything really wrong. I find animation, illustration are very subjective. But coming back to your point also about doing editing yourself, we have lots. I can go on and on and on with stories about people who have edited their book themselves. I have one lady who does editing for people. And she brought the book and she says, I've gone through it. I've gone through it 100 times. It's perfect. Okay. My standard rule is we must do proofread. If our name's going on it, we're going to do a proofread. She sends it back. We sent it back, and there was a few hundred fixes. And she's going, oh my God, I had no idea. So we get it back to her. We fix all the errors. She goes through it again. She finds a handful more. And we went into publication. She calls us up a week later and says, I got a copy of the book. I found more errors. Honestly, it's like, you're just going to keep on finding them. I keep getting books handed to us all the time where an author says, I've paid for editing, I've done editing, I've, edited myself, or I've hired editors and still got lots of mistakes. So to me, I don't think I got to use it cautiously to say many eyes on the book is a good idea, but also you can be too long in that process. I have the opposite story to tell about the fact that some people get their books. One lady hired us almost a year ago, and she's still rewriting her book. It's like, okay, at some point you do have to say, okay, stop, let's submit our book and get it through and make it move forward. So I love that you were talking about pitfalls of editing yourself, because make sure it's good, but also you won't get it perfect. I'm sorry. I can attest to it time and time and time and time again, where someone thought their book was perfect and it wasn't. Even short books. I've seen this publish books, short books, children's books, and next thing you know, someone's bringing up an error. So, and it's funny because in the business we're in, someone said something. I get comments once in a while about our website. It'll have errors in it. It's not that we haven't had an editor read it or a proofreader read it. We haven't had a bunch of eyeballs on it. It's that we're human beings. We're going to get it as perfect as we want it to be. And to me, I think the most important thing is that as long as the flow, you don't lose story, you don't lose messaging, then it's okay. The odd spelling mistake usually doesn't stop me. I know personally. I don't know what your experience is, whether it's ever stopped you. As you're reading a book, do you actually catch that many errors in it?
I catch them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, because I think I read with the first and last, because I can read really, really quickly when I want to. So I find that I don't spend a lot of time and I don't catch them all. It doesn't make me stop.
I've been known to fix it because they'll.
Oh yeah.
I'm one of those that it bugs. So I'll take my pencil and fix the whatever. And usually it's just transposed letters and things like that. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But yep.
Yep, absolutely.
Now,
it's
that said, I'm that careful about things, and my editor caught mistakes. So
oh yeah. As I said, I've had some of the best in the business bring me their books, and it's like I don't know how many people have said. Recently, we had 2 people actually create second editions, and both of them ended up having quite a bit of changes. And I asked one of the girls, one of our proofreaders, actually, how many errors she finds, and maybe Jamie can also speak to this, but how many errors she finds in proofreading. And she said it varies greatly. Some books and it depends on the type of fixes it needs as well. But I don't know, Jamie is I think she's still on the line, right? You do editing for us, and what do you find with what you're?
Well, I really, really like the idea that in this company there are a lot of eyes on everything, and I'm so happy to have Catherine in case I have any doubts about something, because there are some hard and fast rules. And then, even if you read the gigantic Chicago Manual of Style, it's got some, you could do this, you could do that, and some choices there, and you have to be consistent. And it's amazing when you're reading a really long book, how many situations in the English language come up, subtle things that you don't think about every day, and you have to make a decision on how to handle that. But so with a lot of eyes on it, the end product has to be very good going through all that process. What I noticed for the editing, the line editing for myself, is I have to put it aside and go back and see it again with fresh eyes. And I also notice if I get too absorbed in the story, I'm reading the story and the brain does correct things. And then I realize, oh, I got so absorbed in the story. I have to go back and mechanically read everything. I realize I catch myself when I'm just like, oh, engrossed in the story. What's going to happen next? You know? So, yeah.
But that's the point of us being humans, right? Is to your point, is that the brain auto corrects.
Yep.
And if you're engaged in the story, it's like your brain auto fixed and you moved on. It's which is actually, it's a good thing for the author that you're that engaged.
Yeah,
so there's one of the pitfalls, the good, bad.
But the thing is, with me, if something is spelled wrong, if I'm very engaged in the story, I'll pass it a couple words later, I'll realize something hit me and I don't know what it was. So then I'll look back. That's if I'm really engaged in the story, but it will still hit me that something was wrong. Wait, something's wrong there. What was that? But the really hard thing, not the spelling, but the really hard thing is the little spaces and dots and commas, the period and the comma. It's so small that I really have to read very slowly. But
Yeah,
it's
but the way
I enjoy it. I enjoy perfecting everything, but it's very challenging. It's a very challenging job.
It is, to be honest, it's not something I would ever want to do. I commend you. I want to make sure that you know that you do a great job, and it is not something I want to do at all. It's because it's tedious. And then we are trained that, like Marna had recommended a book that I'm reading right now, and I'm like, I just want to fly right through it. So I can imagine if I was editing or required to edit, I'd be really bad. I'd have to go back 400 times to make sure I'm catching things. So, and again, I think one of the,
I find it grueling, but I'm
imagine.
obsessed to do it for some reason. So I guess I was
That's
born
good.
with that obsession, because I ask myself, how is it that I'm putting myself through this? Because it's very difficult, but for some reason I'm always drawn to it, and I just love the feeling of satisfaction at the end of seeing things improved and a polished result. So
yeah, I would too. And again, it's that's the hope when someone gets the book, is that it is that good. So that's our goal. I know with Hasmark is to achieve that for our authors, and we appreciate what you do very much, because that would be the goal of it. Absolutely. Thought just went in and out of my brain as I was saying that too.
When the author comes back in the end and says, thank you so much, it's so wonderful, then it's satisfying, very satisfying.
I got to tell you, I think that's one of the best things about this industry, is that it is a very satisfying place we are. We get some incredible comments back. I'm very fortunate in what I do, is that I usually hear from authors, and I hear how great the team is, including you guys who do the editing as well, or the evaluation, whatever part of it that you're involved in. It's because I know we've had we've had books released recently, and all the reviews have been very, very good. So yeah, great job. I was thinking too about one of the things that I find is very, very important is the completeness. Every aspect of the book is edited. I think that's an important one as well, because and the more complete the manuscript gets given to us, the easier that is, because I'm sure for when you're editing a book, you'd rather have all parts of it, even the forward, whatever it may be, dedication, because it all rhymes. It all means, it's all elements of the book that are important. So editing every aspect of it is so important. So, and as a note, Jennifer, I mentioned earlier in the call about the paper. Marnie, you had mentioned about, please don't give it to us in handwriting. There is, or hearing that there's, and trust me, I had one person who brought me over. They invited me to their house here in Ottawa. And I get there and she has several books. Yeah, they're all typewritten. And I'm like, oh my God, in order to do the work for her, she'd literally have to deliver boxes to my house because she has images and stuff like that. Wow, what a lot of work. So Jen mentioned a tool called, or an app called Rocketbook. Apparently they'll do transfer your writing in from the computer. I'm not sure how it works, but it's called Rocketbook. It looks like it's all one word.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
The book. You actually write in it. See? You write in it, and then I don't know if you can see it. It transfers to the computer.
No, can't see it.
Anyway,
But it's
right. And then I just literally scan a thing at the bottom and it transfers it all onto my computer.
and it's pretty good. It's actually very good. Optical character recognition, or OCR, has come a long way, and with scanning things and translating it. If you, and the cool thing I think about Rocketbooks is you can then erase them. Do you have the microwavable one?
No, I just have it. Has a cloth. It's just an eraser pen. There's a Walmart one, so
there's some that you erase, some that you hit with a hairdryer or throw it in the microwave, and the words disappear and you can reuse the pages again. So from that point of view, it works really well. But that's another way that you're just getting what you've handwritten into a format that a publisher can use. I've also, there are some other scanning technology, various OCR, optical character recognition programs that are possible to use, but it's just nicer for your publishers and your editors if you give it to them in something that they can actually use. Oh
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know there's another one where the voice, where you can
Dragon Naturally Speaking. Word comes with one built in that's actually really good. I like the new Word technology. It's gotten loads better recently.
Oh, wow. Cool. I didn't know that.
Dragon is another one that's been around for, maybe decades now. A long time at least, and used to be pretty expensive. It's come down a lot. So that's another one, but I mean, there's some
apps too. One of them I think is called speech to text. Yeah, I think it's what it's called. I remember we downloaded a couple back over time as we're talking about various things like that, but that was another one. But I know that there's things that you can record, apps you can record, like you can record into your phone and then it'll transfer it into paper.
And those work really well. There often is some level of formatting that you have to do to make it pretty. And when I've noticed that when I'm talking, if I'm doing that, remembering to tell it that there's a period at the end of the sentence or inserting commas and that kind of stuff, that's something that I have to work on better. I've done it, but when I say I've done it, comma, so it does work, period, that you have to get in the flow of actually doing that, or come back after the fact and put all of those endpoints and stuff in. But lots of different tips and techniques for doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's basically, reach out, because we've got lots of experience and lots of ideas, and that's what we're here for. It is, I think we're beginning to head towards wrapping up today's call, and that's what it is we can only, in an hour, we can only go through the summary of it and talk a little bit about the experiences we've seen, but there's so much out there. And as every day goes by, they're evolving with such cool things on the internet. You just ask. No need to go through the manual work that we used to have to go through, like the typewriter. So I remember when being taught in class, and that's aging me, I get that. But it's hard to believe. I actually see a typewriter now and go, oh my God, I didn't know anyone does that anymore. But it's a pretty cool thing.
So speaking of cool things, are there any cool new things in the Bookkamp world, Judy?
Oh, speaking of cool things, something new that's coming our way. Jen maybe can flip the slide. We're creating a new membership site for Bookkamps, and it's in the infancy stage right now. We'll be announcing it formally within a week, 10 days, I would say. We're in it's everything's developed in the background. We're going to be testing it, and that was what we didn't get time enough to do. We've got pretty much all the content defined, and we're really, really looking forward to it. There's going to be a VIP section. There's going to be special access to things as we develop. It is a membership only. The membership will include VIP, as I mentioned. It will give you special access to certain things. We're going to be developing mini courses along as we progress. Like in January, Marna, you held Right Along. And I know that you're going to have another one coming up, I think, later in April or May.
Next one will be in April sometime. Haven't landed on a date yet for April.
There we go. But it's that's one of the things that you would be invited to participate in is the Right Along, which would be included in your membership. There's guest appearances. We have access to an incredible amount of individuals, whether it be a lawyer, which we've had Ben Shea, who's our Hasmark lawyer, and she's represent many of our authors. We have had her as a guest before. Things like Steve Lowell, who's the current president of the Global Speakers Association. He will come on as a special guest. Peggy, I'm certain we can invite her to show up to one of our future calls. We had a year or so ago, and I'm sure I can ask her again, Marcy Scheimoff, who is, I don't know if everyone knows who she is, but she's the female contributor to Chicken Soup for the Soul. She's sold, it's a crazy amount of books, one of the top leading sellers of in self-help world. And we did some of her New York Times bestsellers, so she credits us with that, achieving that goal. She deserves it too. She's an incredible lady. Such a privilege to invite her on. Access to all the Bookkamp videos. This is our third one so far, and there's one right now planned for every single month going forward. And sometimes we're going to add some bonus calls. So, because I know we're trying to find a time to do a branding call sometimes, so that'll be a bonus call. As I mentioned, industry experts. In this case, from today's call, there will be a white paper. We've been working with Jamie and a few of our editors in creating this all things editing document. It explains in further detail from what we talked about today. What is it? What are all the elements, the types of editing, who does them, when do they do them, what do they do, that kind of thing. We record every one of the calls. Those videos will be available. Sorry about that, guys. There are extra videos we created. One is to identify how to mark up in the world. Sorry, there. How to mark up a Word document to send it to editing or to an editor. And then we also have another recording that was done by Allison, who's our proofreader, that talks about what proofreading is about. So there's special videos that are created that will be accessible as part of the membership site as well. What else am I missing, Marna?
Well, how it's organized is that there's a, if you want to learn more about editing, you would go to the editing section, and within there you find this really awesome white paper on different types of editing, and you can go in greater detail than what we've got here. Or you can do the write-up where it's step by step, because I frankly always forget how to use the markup tool in Word. So I remember quickly, but there's always that second about what boxes do I need to check, or, you know, how do I open it up and set it up properly? So that is step by step, exactly how you do that. That's in there.
Right.
So for each of so if you're interested in editing, you can go to the editing section and all the stuff. If you want to know something about publishing or something about writing, each of those different sections have all of the pieces in there. And, you know, as long as you are a member, you have access to everything that's there, including what happened previously.
And we had at the beginning of the year, the writing workshop. So there was some tools that we shared with the folks on the call. And then there was the next call in February was the mindset. Yes. So we have like a goal card, we have daily activity reports, stuff like that. The next call, of course, which is our next slide, is all about publishing. So we're going to share that, but I have no doubt there'll be forms and white papers created that we have. The other thing is we have a whole series, 2 years worth of coffee chats where we had experts come on like Banafshe, where we'll actually take those and do exactly what you said, Marna. They'll be created by the call, by the subject of the call. So if we get on a call and we're talking all things legal, then everything that we've ever done in legal that we have available, we'll share there. We have, as Hasmark, and Hasmark is graciously offering it to Bookkamps, is this wealth of information. We have been at this for a lot of years. We're going to talk further about bestseller campaigns. We're going to talk about what else is coming up. Branding, I know, is a future one. Social media is going to be a future call. Doing a bestseller campaign is a future call. I think I do want to do a special one with Steve Lowell where it's about talking on stage, presenting yourself to people. I think that one's a very important one. And we're open to suggestions. If somebody has a topic that they feel they want to talk about, we're always, Jamie's asking about EndNotes. We'll get there in just 1 second. But I think for future, there's a whole pile of, and that would be the other thing that would be part of the membership site, is that you'll be given advance notice of when all these calls are and what the subject of the calls are. And then you'll have the Zoom link and the invitation, so to ensure that you get a special invite to them.
And that's the other thing is we're leaving the recordings up for a short time period. So the people that are in a time zone that just doesn't work for this can view it, but they go away fairly quickly and they go to live in the membership site. So they stay there and you can always access them at your convenience.
Yeah, exactly. And as we're going to wrap up, we'll get back to Jamie in a second. I'm just going to say that the next book camp call is April 20th, same time, noon Eastern. Of course, everybody will be told about it. And it is about publishing your book. We'll do all things publishing. I kind of get the theme for this, all things, whatever it may be. I kind of like it because I know I want to learn as much as I can. So before we sign off, because I see we're coming up to the top of the hour, Jamie, come on board or unmute and share your story.
Yeah, this is just one small topic in the whole aspect of publishing and editing. Related to the editing, I didn't really I encountered a fiction book that actually had end notes because there were quotes that the fictional character was saying, but it was from a real person. So he wanted to list his sources, but I would love for authors to know what type of information needs to be included in the source, citing a source, because sometimes it was very sparse. For example, there was a line in a movie. I actually went to the movie and watched the whole movie. I kind of fast forwarded, but to find the line that was in there. In other cases, there was really almost no information, so I tried to provide a source for the author, but it was very, very time consuming. So if an author comes across a quote and they know where they got it from, it would be great for them to jot down, if it's in a book, the page number. If I don't happen to have the book, you know, it would be hard for me to find. So that would save a lot of time.
Good tip.
Yeah, fantastic tip. I was just thinking as maybe that'll be a future white paper.
And they don't need to be experts at formatting and no, just what information do we need? If it's a book, the title, the author, the page number, the city it was published in, which is right in the book in the beginning.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. We appreciate it.
Sure, thanks.
Okay, again, we're at the top of the hour. I want to respect everybody's time. So we will send out a link and a message for the next book camp call. And Marna is working behind the scenes, pulling together the membership site, and we're reviewing every day to make sure we have all the content. So we will be letting you know very, very soon. So with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. Marnie, you have anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Looking forward to seeing everybody in April.
Yeah, thanks for being with us, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, everyone, stay well. We'll talk next month. Okay, thanks. Bye now.
Bye.